Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today, we're diving deep into ancient history to talk about a conflict that didn't just reshape the political map of Greece, but fundamentally changed the very nature of how wars were fought. I'm talking about the Peloponnesian War. Before this massive, nearly 3-decade-long struggle between Athens and Sparta, Greek warfare was, believe it or not, a relatively straightforward affair. You could almost call it seasonal. Armies of citizen soldiers, called hoplites, would march out, find a nice flat piece of land, and line up in their famous phalanx formations. They'd clash, one side would break and run, and the battle would be over, usually in a single afternoon. The winners would set up a trophy, the losers would collect their dead, and everyone would go home, often in time for the harvest. Campaigns were short, casualties were relatively low, and the goal was a quick, decisive victory. It was a gentlemanly, almost ritualized form of combat. Then, the Peloponnesian War happened. This wasn't a one-day event. It was a grinding, brutal conflict that spanned 27 years. The old rules simply didn't apply anymore. Athens, with its powerful navy and impenetrable long walls, refused to play Sparta's game. They weren't going to march out their hoplites for a decisive land battle they might lose. Instead, Pericles, the Athenian leader, devised a radical new strategy. He ordered the entire population of Attica to retreat inside the city walls. They would let the Spartans raid their farmlands, while the Athenian fleet dominated the seas, raiding Spartan allies and ensuring a steady flow of supplies into Athens. This decision completely upended the traditional way of war. Suddenly, battles weren't the main event. The war became a contest of endurance, a war of attrition. Who could outlast the other? This led to some major innovations, and not all of them were heroic. Sieges became much more common and sophisticated. For the first time, we see the widespread use of mercenaries, professional soldiers who fought for pay, not for their city-state. This was a huge shift from the citizen soldier ideal. The nature of the fighting also got uglier. The war wasn't confined to battlefields anymore. It involved devastating raids on civilian populations, massacres, and political purges within cities. The famous historian Thucydides, who lived through it all, wrote about the moral decay that accompanied the prolonged conflict. The old codes of conduct were thrown out the window. Winning, at any cost, was all that mattered. This shift also had a massive economic impact. Wars were no longer cheap, short-term ventures. They became incredibly expensive, requiring massive state investment in navies, siege equipment, and year-round professional soldiers. Athens used the tribute from its empire to fund its war machine, while Sparta eventually turned to Persia, their old enemy, for gold to build a fleet of their own. The scale was unprecedented. So, when the dust finally settled, with Sparta's ultimate victory, the world of Greek warfare was unrecognizable. The age of the heroic, one-day hoplite battle was over. In its place came a new era of long, draining wars, where strategy, economics, and sheer ruthlessness were just as important as bravery on the battlefield. The Peloponnesian War wasn't just a fight between two cities. It was the brutal birth of modern warfare, a long and bloody farewell to an older, and perhaps more noble, way of fighting. It set a precedent for the conflicts that would follow, showing that victory could be won not just by a single, glorious charge, but by slowly and systematically grinding your enemy into dust. What do you think was the biggest change? Let me know down in the comments. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this deep dive into military history, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next video. See you next time.